Hey, welcome back to the channel, guys. I am here today to talk about how Vipassana changed my life and the impact that it's had on me. Right? So, I'm Khalid. I was born in Ethiopia, spent 4 years there, moved to Kenya, spent another 5 years there, then came to America. And throughout my childhood, I had this desire to know what it is that life is like. What is it that I'm alive? And I was born, thank God, in a very religious environment. And although I'm not super religious, I still do believe in God, and that's really how my journey started. Right. So I think there was a couple things that contributed to my interest in meditation. At that time, obviously, I didn't know about meditation, but really, meditation is a way to discover the nature of reality, right? And so I always had that curiosity for what is reality, what is going on. And one of the things that contributed, like the main thing that contributed to it, was I wanted to know what God made, right? God created me and created the universe, and I had an epiphany when I was very young. I think maybe 4 or 5 years old. I remember it was in Kenya, so I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I remember a moment where I recognized right? I was in my mind, and then I had the recognition. Let me just turn off this real quick. So I had the recognition of and I felt myself in my mind. I see myself surrounded by my mind, right? If you can just imagine, 5, 6 year old me in my mind with my awareness. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, holy moly, this whole thing that I've been focusing on, this external world, is being perceived by this awareness. And this awareness is aware of the external world. And then I'm sitting here in the middle of my mind, and my awareness is connecting to the outside world, and I'm aware of my awareness being aware of external things happening. And I thought this was fantastic, right? I was like, okay, this design, how it is that I am aware of my awareness being aware of the external world, being aware of myself, being aware of my awareness, being aware of, and I could go on. And so this mesmerized me. This made me think, holy moly, what is going on, right? And I didn't give it too much thought, but I was just like, this is sweet. Awareness. Now, where I was born, at the time that I was raised, people were a little violent towards children, right? And it's like America back in the days. You're at school, you do something bad, you're getting a spanking. If you're at home, you do something bad, your dad's giving you a spanking. You're just getting spanked. Now, did the war at that time, was it evil? Did I perceive it as evil? I didn't. But I, was getting disciplined. That's what they say they do that for. Of course, they do that a lot less now, but at that time, that was common practice. So I was surrounded, in this kind of environment where it was very much conservative, a little bit violent towards the kids. And yet I had this thought that this is amazing. Now, it wasn't about the external circumstances of what was going on. Oftentimes, I experienced hunger from time to time. Lack of food. I was in a third world country. I was a refugee in Kenya from my home country, and there was some struggles. Now, life was still beautiful, but the most beautiful thing was this awareness, was this consciousness, was this ability or phenomena of what the heck is going on, and this is awesome, right? So this is the realization I had, when I was, came to be aware that I was a conscious agent that was, moving through the world, as I'm sure we all, at one point in our childhood realized, hey, we're actually a self separate from this external thing, and there's a relationship, and all this good stuff. So that was like one major part that made me curious as to what the heck this is, because I could see that it's amazing, and I could kind of see, right, on the surface. I'm like, okay, I can see, I'm aware, and I'm relating to objects, and I'm moving through the world, and I have this autonomy, right? But I wanted to know deeper, like what, how, how is this happening, and not necessarily why. I never really got too bogged down by the why, but I was bogged down by the how, the what, the where, like where in my mind all these different tools are, like the seat of my consciousness is different from my awareness, right? I can take my awareness and like feel my hands, and my awareness will sort of be here, um but my seat of consciousness will stay up here, right? And so it's like all these different things. Now at that time, I was like super deep into it, and this is what meditation allows me to do. But to continue from, what led up to me wanting to meditate, it was like these things. And then another thing was, growing up in a very religious environment, right? It was like, there's this almighty creator, amazing, wonderful, and God created us to be the way that we are, and for the universe to be the way that it is. So me being raised like that, right? I had the curiosity, and it made sense to me, right? Because although the circumstances of life, I was facing hunger, bullying, kids fighting. I was in that too, right? I was fighting, and like, I saw all this things that might suggest, if one were to just look at it on the surface, to be like, well, why would God allow this? But I never had those kinds of questions. But I did start to question, God, as I came into my early teenage years. Well, not even early, like 10, 11 years old, after I came to America. And, at that point, my mind was a little smarter, was a little more logical, being like still a young kid, 10 years, 11 years old. But, developed enough that I'm not a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. And I started to ponder and say, religion doesn't make sense to me. And like one of the big reasons was, if God created all of us and made a test for all of us, and we need to pass that test to go to heaven, and God knew everything that we were going to do, and then he would also know whether we did pass or fail, and then he would make the test in such a way that the majority of humanity would fail, right? Like, no matter which religion you pick, each religion says, well, if you're in this religion, you're going to go to heaven. If you're not, you're not. And so it's like, if you look at the majority, the biggest religions, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, they all take up, like 1 billion, 1 billion, I don't know the exact numbers nowadays. But compared to 7, 8 billion people, even 1 billion, right? Let's take the biggest religion. Let's say it's 1.3. Don't quote me on the numbers. Let's round that down to 1 billion, and there's 8 billion humans. That means 1 billion will pass, 8 billion will fail. And so it's like, well, if God was so smart and so merciful, and he made a test for humans, and he also made the humans to take the test, and he made it so only 1 out of 8 people passed, I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. Now, however, this did not make me say that God isn't real, or God doesn't make sense. I simply was like, you know what? I'm going to stop seeking answers to God from outside, right? I had a hypothesis, and that hypothesis was that I believe God created me, right? So I had this, going back to that earlier thing of coming into the realization of the grandness of consciousness, of mind, of humanness. Coming into that realization, right, there was like this innate, holy moly, this shit is beyond what I could comprehend. And it kind of makes sense that whatever created this is even more beyond comprehension, right? Like, if I couldn't even comprehend the complexity and the amazingness of this, how can I comprehend the fullness of the one that created it, right? And so from that, I still had a hypothesis, right? But then this, coming to terms with the way that religion portrays God, I was like, okay, here's my hypothesis, right? I still do believe, like, I have a theory, and I'm going to try to prove this theory right or wrong. I have a hunch that I was created, right? It could be God, it could be the universe, the earth, like whatever it is. Something created me, right? I did not create myself. I did not arise out of myself. I'm not self-sufficient, right? I depend upon others. I depend upon these molecules. I depend on other things. So I understood that I was not independent. Someone created this. And now my hypothesis was, if I want to know the creator, I have to study this creation, right? Here I am, a creation. I am a piece. I am a art. I am something that has been created by magnificent hands, by magnificent forces, right? It's not about exactly how I describe the creator, right? But it is, I was, I'm just going to call the creator God, and I'm going to study, right? My hypothesis was, if I have this creation and I want to know the nature of God, the nature of the creator, then I must study the creation. I must study how this is put together, how this functions, and how it connects with each other to create what I am experiencing as my life, right? And so my hypothesis was, I'm going to study this design, and by studying this design, I can get insight into the workings of the creator, for lack of better terms, into the nature of the creator, basically into, to just know God a little better. So I wanted to do that. And so I, luckily at this time, it was, I was in America, I was just learning English. I got glasses for the first time, which was wild. And this actually contributed to, I was born not able to see. Like, I can see, I'm not like fully blind. My prescription is 20/40, which just means what somebody can see from 40 feet, I have to be 20 feet to like see it, right? And so if I'm standing 40 feet, I wouldn't be able to like make out the words and stuff. Obviously, I can see a shape. If there's a building 40 feet away, I can like see, the big shape. But if there's like big words on it, if somebody can see it from 40 feet, I can like read the words and stuff. So anyway, when I was younger, I could not see the world, or I could see the world, but it was blurry, it was bland, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And so not being able to see, and being in Ethiopia and Kenya, I didn't know that I couldn't see. I didn't know that I wasn't seeing clearly. I just thought this is how the universe is. And a funny story, people used to always when I was going to the mosque, one of the things that they say God, makes God, or proves God's existence, is to see the beauty of the world, right? It's like saying, I don't know, remember the exact words, but it's like, look at the beauty all around you, look at how amazing everything is. How can all this come from nothing, right? How can all this structure and beauty come from nothing? There must be a creator, right? Like, that's one of the arguments. In my mind, I used to think, it's not that pretty. You know what I mean? Like, it's aight at best. Like, at best, it's aight. It ain't beautiful and magnificent. Now, this was because I couldn't see. Now, obviously, I look out, I see all the vibrance, with these glasses. I see all the colors, I see all the shapes, and yes, it's very beautiful. But without the glasses, very blurry, very bland, let's say. So, coming to America, having some more opportunities, having the internet, right? I did not have the internet access. There was internet at that time back in Kenya, but I just didn't have access to it. It was very, 2004 was the time that I came here. Maybe even in America, it wasn't like super widespread yet. But anyway, once I came, 2005, 2006, I'm getting access to the internet. I've fully learned English. I'm like super able to talk English and super well. And so I researched this hypothesis. How can I study myself? So I Googled, how can you learn about yourself? How can you learn about the nature of reality? And like the first few things that popped up was like, read philosophers, read, see what other humans have thought about the nature of reality. And I said, that is not what I want to do, right? I'm coming from this place where, religion is telling me about God, and I wanted to find my own way to like, I have this thing here which God created, and I want to like study it, like, because on one hand, I also understood my mind as young. I'm like 11 years old. I'm like, I could read something and somebody can easily make me think something is true when it's not. But because my mind is so young, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, right? And so I was like, I can't really trust external sources of knowledge, because then on my end, it would either just be believing it, or like being being brainwashed, or just accepting it, right? Like, oh well, Plato said that. Like it wouldn't be coming from me. It would be like, well, Socrates said that. You know what I mean? So I was like, no, I don't want to read philosophy. I'm not trying to do all this stuff. And then somehow, some way, I found something about Anapana meditation that said, by focusing on your breath, it's called meditation, and you can learn about the nature of yourself. And the moment that I read this, I said, holy moly, this is what I need. Right here is a part of the design. And, reading a little bit about the breath is like connected to your subconscious. It's something you can do consciously, subconsciously. It's a experience that you can tune into that is internal, that isn't as hectic as thoughts, right? I try to like meditate on my thoughts, and that just didn't work because I'm 11. I don't really have deep insights and things to like really focus on inside my mind. So anyway, I found the Anapana breath meditation, and I just clicked. It just clicked for me, and I was like, this is what I need. This is how I study the nature of my design, the nature of this design, the nature of my mind, the nature of my body, because, the breath is connected to the body. And this is the path. This is the tool. This is what I'm going to put energy into in order to come to understand the nature of reality as I have been designed by the great designer, right? So that was a big moment. That was a big moment that really changed a lot. And I started, meditating at that point. And it was really interesting because I was only just meditating literally when I was curious, out of pure curiosity. I was like, all right, well, it's time to, just go discover a little more, go explore, see what we can find out about reality, about the way that I've been designed, right? And so it was like very spontaneous. It was very authentic. It was a very, curious endeavor. And that's how my meditation started. I would just do it when I'm curious. I would just do it, when I'm like, well, I just want to know what is going on and I want to indulge in this. And for some reason, there would be periods, right? I would do it for a few months, like every day. Then I would not do it for a few months. Then I would get curious again, and then I'd go back for a few months. And I never like timed it, but it was in the time of about 20 to 30 minutes would be my, average meditation session. I never like timed it. It wasn't anything like that because I didn't have it in my mind that, oh, meditating for mental health or like have less depression or like none of this, right? That wasn't in my mind. What was in my mind is, here is a way by which I can study the nature of my mind and my body and the phenomena that makes me up. And in learning about the nature of my mind, I can learn about the nature of the environment which allows this to come into existence, and by that extension, come to know the nature of the creator, right? So I was like, I was hooked. I was doing it. It was amazing. I had my waves of doing it, my waves of not doing it. And then, so I was just doing this just on my own. Then one of my friends, my best friend, Abdi, we went to high school together and we just clicked. I was always telling him about meditating, and I was just telling him, you got to do this. This is interesting. This is how life is. And we would have, the longest conversations and debates on what the nature of life was, what the nature of society is, and what the nature of all these things. And I was heavily informed by my practice, by what I was experiencing in my meditation and the realizations and the insights I had come to through the process of discovering the makeup of my mind, right? And extending that out into the world, and saying, well, this is how, if this is how my mind is, then the average mind is also made thus, and then thus I can, have these conclusions. Like, one of the conclusions is, I want to live a good life. I want to be happy. I want to, like, it feels good to be happy, right? In my mind, when I feel good, it feels good. When I feel bad, it feels bad. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but it's like, why does lying feel bad to me, right? To me personally, it feels bad to lie. It feels bad to be angry, right? And like in the moment, I could be angry. I could, let out steam. Oh, the person deserved it, blah, 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 right? Like in the moment, it could feel good. But then always later on, it's like, man, I shouldn't have done that, right? Like I should have like chilled out. I shouldn't have like gone that far. And it always comes to that. And so it's like, at the end of the day, being angry and losing your cool does not feel good to me. Like, why? Why does it not feel good? Why is it when I'm calm, collected, and I handle situations greatly, I look back and I say, wow, I was awesome. I was amazing back there, right? Like I was fucking fantastic. So, why does it feel good to do things that are good, and why does it feel bad to do things that are bad, right? And then it's like, well, that is how I have been designed, right? That's how the mind was designed to react a certain way to these kinds of stimuli, these kinds of experiences, and to these other ones. And then I'm like, well, I would say most humans are like this, right? And then it's like, well, most humans don't want to get angry and lose control and do things that they don't want to do. Most humans do want to be calm and collected and handle situations intentionally and the way that they want it to in the long run, right? And it's like, sure, can there be people that perhaps something went wrong and they don't feel good to do good? Sure. But anyway, like the main point was I was creating my understanding of the world, and it was like, okay, even if people do bad things, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. Like, it doesn't mean that they were designed to be bad people. It's just, we do some stuff that we regret later on. And so, I had the position, humans are good and all these things. But anyway, to continue the story. So Abdi one day, I think it was after high school, after many years of these debates and these conversations and all these things, he comes to me and he says, yo, there is a 10-day meditation retreat that you can go to for free. Now, at this time, I was a college kid. Didn't really have a lot of money. I actually looked into going to a meditation retreat, but they were all thousands of dollars. And I was like, I love meditating, but I neither have thousands of dollars, nor do I want to spend thousands of dollars on a meditation retreat. So when he said it's free, it was just like, yep, I'm going. Like, I love meditating, couldn't afford it, but as soon as he said it's free, I'm like, yup, let's go. And I think literally soon after we signed up for, some time in the future. It's, 10 days. It's not super easy to just jump on it, but we planned it and we went. Excuse me. So we go to Goenka's 10-day meditation retreat. And this was one of the most life-changing experiences of my life. It was December 21st, 2016 when I, the course started on the 21st. So I went on the 21st. I was supposed to be in South Korea at that time. I was like traveling the world. I was going after my dream of traveling the world. I was like, I saved up a bunch of money, and then I was like, I'm going to go travel. And I had applied to this Vipassana sit on the 21st, and it ends on the 1st. January 1st was the last day. So I had applied, and I was on the wait list, so I wasn't sure if I was going to get in. And, I had applied way many months in advance, and they didn't let me know. And so at some point, I was like, all right, I'm just going to South Korea December 16th. This was like 5 days before the meditation. But because I was on the wait list for so long, and I didn't hear anything for many, many months, I was like, well, I'm not going. I don't have enough time to like apply for another one, blah, blah, blah. But somehow, like a week before I fly, they call me and they're like, hey, you're in. Can you come to the course? And I thought to myself, I bought a non-refundable ticket. It was about, I don't know, $600. It was a one-way to South Korea because I was planning to like go travel around. And I was like, you know what? If this is what I gotta pay, this is happening. So I end up, just for the sake of trying, I say absolutely yes. Then I call the airline and I tell them, hey, is it possible for me to change my flight date? And I'm fully expecting a no. Oh, it's you got the cheapest ticket. It clearly said no refunds and no changes allowed unless it's an emergency, right? And so the emergency was like health related stuff. And so basically they were like, the guy was on the phone with me and he said, we're not allowed to do this unless you have an emergency. Like, can you tell me what's going on? Now, it popped into my head to lie, to say somebody got sick, somebody died, I gotta stay, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna tell the truth. So I told the guy, like, hey, a while ago, like many months ago, I signed up for a 10-day silent meditation retreat that starts on the 21st, but they didn't get back to me. Like, they had me on the wait list for months, and I just like kind of figured I wasn't gonna get in. And so I bought this ticket, months ago at this point. But they just called me and they said I was in, and I really want to go to it. And I, like this is the truth. Now, this isn't no emergency. But the guy goes, super amazing guy, just super wonderful. He looks at me and I know he's thinking. He was just silent for a moment. And he said, wow, that sounds awesome. And I'm like, yeah. Like, I've been wanting to go to a, meditation retreat for a long time. And now I'm finally going. And he's like, yeah, that's good. And then he's like, you know what I can do for you? I can change your flight and all you have to pay is the difference in airfare. Right? And I was like, oh shit, really? Like, that's it? And then he's like, yeah. And then it ended up, being like $30-$40 more or something, like changing it to a couple days after the course ends. And I was like, holy moly, this was the point where I knew, where I was like, okay, I don't know if this is a coincidence. I don't know if my mind is making this more, turn out to be more than it is. But here I am already getting my first blessing, right? Instead of losing $600 or however much I spent on it, this guy was like, hey, just pay $40 more and, we can just change your flight and it's all good. This was the first point where I was like, all right, something special's about to happen. And so I like changed my flight to a few days later to like the 4th or something, if I remember correctly. So then I go on December 21st, 10 days. It's amazing. First 3 days, breath, anapana. This is literally what I've been doing for like the last, I don't know, like 13 years, 12 years or something. Not consistently, like I was saying earlier, months on, months off, all this good stuff. But it was, I was very at home. I was very comfortable. I knew what was happening. I went super deep. And then day 4, they teach Vipassana. And Vipassana, oh my goodness. That day, on day 4, afternoon is when they do it. I was like, this right here is the next level. This is how you really know the nature of existence. This right here. This Vipassana is the way to understand the nature of reality as it is. And this is what this is my whole thing. This is what I was building up towards, and this is what I wanted to accomplish. This is the nature of reality as it is, as it really is, by observing the phenomena of the body, by observing the activity of the body, not necessarily activity of like moving and doing all this stuff, but the internal activity, the at the deepest level, at the level of sensations, at the level of cells, and at the level of these things. Now, obviously, day one, I wasn't, going super deep, but I got the feeling that this is how to study this thing. And right, that is what Vipassana is. It's insight meditation into the nature of reality as it is. Not as you want it to be, not as you wish for it to be, not as you hope for it to be, but as it is by itself naturally. And the way you even do Anapana leads into that, and like it trains you, right? So I go into that. I go into Vipassana, and I'm like, holy moly, this is the practice. And long story short, I complete the 10-day. I come out January 1st, and the whole 10 days. It's a little cold. It's winter. I live in Seattle, and this course was on Alaska at Dhammakunja. And so it was like winter season, definitely super cold, but it hadn't snowed until that final morning that we're waking up. We're going to be leaving in a couple hours. So I wake up on the last day, January 1st, and the whole, ground is snow white, and there aren't even footsteps in it yet. And it's just this clean, beautiful, serene image. And that is how I felt. I felt like, spending those 10 days there, cleaning out. Like, I didn't even go to clean out. Excuse me. I went to search the nature of my reality. So cleaning it out, I felt so clean. I felt so fresh. I felt so energized. I felt so alive, so awake, and so beautiful within myself that this was just another metaphor of it showing that meditation is, something special. Now, I'm not going to read too much into it, but it was a very nice coincidence. So then, I finish up the course, then I go travel around the world, right? I basically go travel around the world, do my thing. I was able to keep practicing for a few months. Then I stopped practicing, because it was when you leave a 10-day, they say, one of the things you got to commit to if you really want to go on this path, and this is the path that you choose, you have to meditate 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour at night, and I was like, that sounds awesome. But at some point, a couple months after I lost, then a few months later I come back, a few months later I lose, and I still had that cycle going on. So that cycle was still going on. And it wasn't until very recently, I think in the last 3-4 years, about 3 years. Anyway, it wasn't until the last few years that I have been very consistent in my 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. And the main reason for that really was because I was noticing how my life suffers without meditation. I was noticing more anxiety, more depressive systems. I was noticing less exuberance. I was noticing less embracing of life. I was noticing that I was becoming very surface oriented. I was so worried about external features of the world, right? And not the deep inner truth. And that's, how meditation really changed my life, is, it went from a curiosity, which I still do have, a curiosity of the nature of life. And then it's become a way of living, right? It's become a way of maintaining an atmosphere of joy in myself. Now, this doesn't mean I'm always joyful, but I am in a more calm environment. I change the environment within myself, and I have to do this every day, right? I have to meditate every day in order to make the environment of my mind conducive to happiness, conducive to joy, conducive to living intentionally, right? There's all these benefits and all these changes where periods in the past where I didn't meditate, it would take a little while to start to taper off, right? So let's say I had a stint of meditating, however much time for 3 months in a row, and then I stopped, right? So like the first couple days, let's say I'm here, nothing really changes. Then slowly, just slowly, it starts to go down. I start to get a little more irritated at things. I start to get a little more annoyed at things. I start to feel a little empty inside, just a little bit, right? Not super noticeable. But at some point it goes, and then it's like, okay, holy shit, I feel miserable. I feel shitty. I feel like, I don't know, I just don't feel that great. I don't feel as great as I usually do. And then that moment comes and it's like, maybe I should start meditating, right? I did many cycles of this to start to be like, oh, there's a correlation between the nature of the environment of my mind with meditating and without meditating, right? It's like meditation helps, like I'm sure you've read on the internet or experienced it for yourself. Meditation helps with these symptoms. It makes you feel lighter, it makes you feel better, it makes you feel calmer, all these benefits. So when I was not experiencing those benefits, obviously the opposite of those benefits would be a little more anxious, a little more depressed, a little more irritated, a little more of all these things. And so it's like lack of meditation leads to the inverse of the benefits. Anyway, it leads to bad consequences, is basically what I'm trying to say. And I noticed that, right? It's like doing cycles, I was like, oh shit, maybe it's correlated. Maybe there's something connected somehow. And so that was like, I would say that was one of the biggest reasons for why I committed to a daily practice. Is holy moly, the nature of my mind, the nature of my life without meditation is worse than with it, right? My life is better when I meditate. And so I was like, okay, if I want my life to be better, I need to meditate every single day. And so, thank God I have been committed for the last few years. And, these changes are really what keep it pushing and what keeps me motivated to keep going, and to go further and further. And maybe in a video I'll talk about the progression in the practice itself that I've made, instead of how Vipassana came into my life and changed my life. And so now it's like I'm able to be smiley. People always have called me the smiley guy, even in high school, college, now in my workplace. I'm always smiling, I'm always in a good mood. Obviously life, things happen. Sometimes I get sad, obviously. I'm not saying I'm happy all the time, but I consider myself generally a happy guy. And the people around me generally tell me, seem pretty happy. And that makes me feel good. And that is the impact that it's making. And that is one of the things that meditation does do, is it does make you happier. And so this happiness I want to hold on to, I want to experience, and I want to keep growing it and sharing with the world, right? And so in me making these videos, it's, I'm just really trying to share with people the meditation journey. I'm trying to share Vipassana and how important it is in my life, and why do I meditate every single day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. And next levels is you're trying to get to a place where you're on some level you're meditating constantly. So there's this whole progression of Vipassana, which is amazing, and I'm going on this journey, and I find it very beneficial, and I want to share that benefit. And so I want to make these videos just talking about Vipassana and all these things to come to help others. That's really what I want to do. And I'll keep an eye out for more videos on how meditation has affected me, what it is, how I go about it, and all these good things. And so thanks for checking in. I know this is a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment, a like. I'm happy to respond to all your comments, because I really do want to talk more about meditation with people, and I want it to help everybody. All right, subscribe, don't forget. All right, take care.